Hi, it's Joanne. If you're confused or just curious about MTHFR, this episode will set you on the right path. Just because you have an MTHFR gene mutation doesn't mean you need to take methylfolate, and it definitely doesn't mean you have a methylation issue or that you are inverted commas undermethylating. Methylation is far more complex than one gene mutation or one nutrient. I'm not here to bore you with all the different gene SNPs and what they mean. You can easily find that information online. Instead, I want to share what I find clinically relevant when it comes to MTHFR. Welcome to the Histamine Well Podcast, designed for practitioners and patients alike. This is your trusted source for insights on histamine intolerance, methylation, gut health, women's hormones, and much more. I'm Joanne Kennedy, your host, naturopath, author, and educator, passionate about breaking down complex science into clear, accessible knowledge. Whether you're a health professional or navigating your personal wellness journey, the Histamine Well podcast bridges the gap between cutting-edge research and practical understanding to empower you with the tools to thrive. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. Today's episode is all about MTHFR, and boy does this enzyme and gene mutation get a lot of attention. So what's it all about? Why do you need to know about MTHFR? To answer these questions, we are going to cover exactly what MTHFR is and why it's essential for methylation, what methylation is and why it's so important for our overall health, the other reasons you can have a methylfolate deficiency. It's not just all about MTHFR. I'll explain why folic acid is a problem for everyone, not just those with an MTHFR gene mutation. I'll also talk about the different folate testing available and what to do if you have an MTHFR gene mutation. The main reason you need to know about MTHFR is that it's involved in the process of converting folate into methylfolate, and methylfolate is one of the important nutrients required to make SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine, which is the body's major methyl donor. And it's the only enzyme that can do that. Since it's the only enzyme that can do that, issues with that enzyme due to gene mutations can cause like a choke point for getting the methylfolate needed into the methionine pathway to make SAMe. And many people do have a mutation on MTHFR whereby they have a potential to have a reduction in its functioning, which can lead to methylfolate deficiency. So, why is producing SAMe so important? SAMe is involved in the process of methylation. And methylation is a biochemical process in which a methyl group, so methyl group is just a carbon atom with 3 hydrogens and a spare arm, and it goes around the body and it attaches itself to different substrates, including DNA, RNA, proteins, neurotransmitters, hormones, immune cells, and nerve cells. And when this occurs, the chemical compound has been methylated. So essentially, it allows the compound to do its job. What's important to know is that it acts like an on-off switch. So it allows the compound to function and do its job, but then it also needs to be switched off. Otherwise, we have too many neurotransmitters. We have too much detoxification of our hormones. We have overactive immune cells, etc. So things need to be in balance. The body needs to be in homeostasis. So, from a biochemical or metabolic standpoint, methylation is essential for detoxification. So, there are several pathways in the liver of detoxification, and methylation is one of those. It's particularly important for detoxifying hormones, environmental toxins, and medications. So, when you have issues with impaired liver detoxification, you can have skin issues, nausea, fatigue, headaches. You can also have estrogen dominance. Methylation is really important for the production and the balance of neurotransmitters. So it helps make serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, melatonin. It's important for mood and motivation and a healthy stress response and sleep. right? So we need to make the neurotransmitters, but we also need to break them down. And this is where we can have major issues with mood, anxiety, depression, an inability to concentrate, panic, OCD like tendencies. So it's balanced methylation is key for overall mood. A really big job of methylation is energy production. So a lot of methyl groups go into energy, and in particular, the synthesis of creatine, which is a molecule critical for muscle energy storage and ATP regeneration. So when methylation is impaired, symptoms like muscle weakness and brain fog and chronic fatigue can develop. Another really big job of methylation is to make phosphatidylcholine, and phosphatidylcholine is a component of cell membranes. So we need really healthy cell membranes. We need good cell membrane integrity, as this allows for the proper cellular signaling and nutrient transport. It also protects the cells from environmental stresses. So the combination of creatine synthesis and phosphatidylcholine synthesis, so cell membrane health and energy, uses something like 70% of your methyl groups. So it's really, really important role. It's also important for immune system modulation and sort of balancing. It helps us mount a healthy immune response, but it also prevents an overactive immune system. Okay, so issues can cause like chronic inflammation, increased susceptibility to infections, autoimmune like symptoms. Another super important role of methylation is the production of glutathione, which is the body's major antioxidant. So when methylation is balanced and your homocysteine is being diverted into glutathione, so homocysteine stores sulfur and it provides the sulfur for a pathway called the transsulfuration pathway, which is involved in making glutathione. It's a really important pathway in the body, and a lot of things can go wrong with that pathway. And you'll see low homocysteine levels when that pathway is really disrupted. And I'll do a whole episode on the transsulfuration pathway and low homocysteine. But essentially, methylation, as being an important part of making glutathione, is when you've got issues with methylation, you can have a lot of oxidative stress. And we have to talk about histamine. So, methylation is really important for breaking down histamine, particularly in most organs of the body. But as we need to know that the DAO enzyme is absent in the central nervous system. We always need to remember that methylation is taking a real hit when it comes to high histamine in the central nervous system. So you'll need a lot of methyl groups to break down histamine in the central nervous system when it's too high. And it does this via the histamine N methyltransferase enzyme. So many, many roles. There are over 200 enzymes that methylation works on in the body, but they're just some of the important ones that we need to know about. And so, what does methylation do from a gene perspective? Methylation is a master regulator of genetic activity, determining which genes are expressed and which remain silent. It ensures proper development, maintains genetic stability, and allows cells to adapt to environmental cues. So, super, super important. So, some examples of this is that it turns genes on or off like a light switch. So, for example, methylation silences genes that aren't needed, such as genes for childhood development being turned off in adulthood. It protects the DNA and keeps it stable during cell division. So, example is that methylation silences repetitive DNA sequences that could cause damage or errors in your genetic material. It helps cells specialize into specific types like skin or muscle cells by turning on only the needed genes. So during pregnancy, methylation ensures that stem cells develop into heart cells, brain cells, and so on. So you can very clearly see that it's super important for our overall health and well-being. So obviously, if you have a mutation on the MTHFR gene, you're going to be really interested in supporting this enzyme. But what if you don't have a mutation on MTHFR? Well, you can still have a methylfolate deficiency. So, to understand this, we need to talk about the folate pathway, because MTHFR is one enzyme in that pathway. Just one, because there's other things that can go on. So folate refers to the folate which is found in foods, predominantly green vegetables and legumes. And folate is absorbed via the brush border enzymes in the small intestine. So if you've got an issue with the small intestine, such as SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which can reduce the production of brush border enzymes, or the environment is too acidic whereby these enzymes are not working properly, this can cause folate malabsorption. Celiac disease can also cause folate malabsorption. Excessive alcohol consumption will deplete your folate levels. So it's not just about a gene mutation. You need to be consuming foods rich in folate, and you need to have a healthy gut to absorb them. So I can hear you say, what about folic acid? So folic acid is a synthetic form of folate. It's fortified in wheat in Australia, the US, and other countries. It'll be in a lot of processed foods. You'll also see it in supplements. And while folic acid can be metabolized by people, it requires 3 steps to be converted into methylfolate. So once folate from food is absorbed into the intestinal cells, folate is then reduced to dihydrofolate via the DHFR enzyme, the dihydrofolate reductase enzyme. Now, this same enzyme, the DHFR enzyme, then needs to convert the dihydrofolate into tetrahydrofolate, which is the form that enters the bloodstream. I'll say that again. Consume your folate-rich foods. They need to be absorbed via the small bowel into the intestinal cells, and folate then gets reduced into dihydrofolate via the DHFR enzyme, and then dihydrofolate via this same enzyme gets converted into tetrahydrofolate, which is the form that enters the bloodstream. So we've now got tetrahydrofolate in the bloodstream. And then tetrahydrofolate can go on and make the different types of folate, including methylfolate. What we need to know about this DHFR enzyme is that it has a higher affinity for folic acid than it does for folate. So essentially, folic acid can block the conversion of folate into dihydrofolate and tetrahydrofolate, which will lead to a reduction in tetrahydrofolate, which is the form that enters the bloodstream, which can be used to make the different types of folate the body needs, including methylfolate. Furthermore, the DHFR enzyme is very slow acting, meaning folic acid can build up in the circulation. And then we've got MTHFR, which is the final step in the process of converting folic acid into methylfolate. So if you have a SNP or gene mutation on MTHFR, this is going to compound the problem. So we can see folic acid, it takes 3 steps to be converted into methylfolate, and the enzymes that do it are really slow. And if you've got an MTHFR gene mutation right at the bottom, and you're really not able to get enough methylfolate from this process, then we can really see that folic acid is a big problem. What we also need to know is that even if you don't have an MTHFR gene mutation, the DHFR enzyme, or you can have mutations on DHFR enzyme causing a reduction in function, but we always need to think about epigenetics, what in the environment is causing issues. And so folic acid is something that really is causing issues with all people potentially having methylfolate deficiency. Before we go any further, I want to speak directly to the practitioners and students listening. If you're intrigued by histamine and methylation and eager to expand your knowledge in this fascinating area, we offer the Histamine and Methylation online group coaching course, the only program of its kind. It covers everything you need to know about histamine and methylation, providing both the theory and guidance you need to treat these issues effectively in clinical practice. We cover SIBO, hormonal imbalances, oxalates, MTHFR, the 4 pathways of methylation, including the folate pathway, methionine pathway, tetrahydrobiopterin pathway, and the all-important transsulfuration pathway, and much more. The program is delivered by detailed online webinars and handouts for you to keep. And for 8 weeks, you'll meet with me for live coaching calls in a private community space with other practitioners from all over the world dealing with histamine and methylation issues in their patients every day. To learn more and apply, visit joannekennedyneuropathy.com. So, how do we know exactly what type of folate we actually have? So, I'm going to talk about the testing. So, we can test serum folate. Your doctor will do this. It measures the amount of folate circulating in the bloodstream at the time of the test. It includes folate from food, folic acid, the synthetic form. It includes a form called 5-formyl tetrahydrofolate that's commonly known as folinic acid, and it also includes methylfolate. So it's a pool of all your different folates. So essentially, you really don't know which type you have. The doctor can also test red cell folate. So it measures folate stored inside red cells. It includes folate from food, folic acid, synthetic form, folinic acid, and methylfolate. So the same types as the serum folate. It's just what is inside red cells. And we still don't know what type of folate you have. I've looked into this, guys. I can't find the testing outside of Australia for this. I'm sure it's available in the US. I would be contacting the labs that do methylation panels, such as Genova. But what I'm saying here is that you can test your different types of folate. You can test blood plasma tetrahydrofolate, blood plasma folinic acid, and blood plasma methylfolate. Nutripath do that in Australia as part of their methylation panel. So we can actually see how much methylfolate you have. Interestingly, when I look at this test, you can often see people have adequate or high amounts of tetrahydrofolate, which means that they're consuming folate and that they've got enough in their blood. And then you can see they've got really low methylfolate. That is such a classic red sign of an MTHFR gene mutation, where they're not actually able to get the tetrahydrofolate converted into methylfolate. So what can you do to support your MTHFR? Well, you need to be avoiding folic acid, and that's everyone. As I was saying, folic acid has a higher affinity for the DHFR enzyme, which takes your folate from food and converts it into tetrahydrofolate, which enters the bloodstream and then will go on to make the different forms of folate. And obviously, if you've got an MTHFR gene mutation, you need to be extra careful. You need to be consuming green leafy vegetables and legumes to get your folate. So good sources are green leafy, spinach, kale, etc., asparagus, broccoli, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, beans, and avocado. And I can hear a lot of you saying, but Jo, I can't have spinach, it's high in histamine. I can't have asparagus and broccoli, it's high in sulfur. I can't have avocado, it's high in histamine. I can't have the legumes, it feeds SIBO. I understand. I totally understand. So this is why nutritionists and naturopaths are so good at dealing with issues with methylation, because we need to start doing the basics and we need to start fixing your gut so that you can absorb these foods. SIBO being a really big thing that you need to get under control. You don't make sure you've got adequate digestive enzymes so that you can actually absorb these folate-rich foods. I can also hear you saying, should I supplement with methylfolate? And the answer is not a straight out yes. And this is for a few reasons. So some people can have very serious adverse reactions to methylfolate, which can include anxiety, depression, insomnia, panic attack. Okay, and this will be particularly problematic for those who already have too many methyl groups, commonly known as overmethylating. And I know this is a contentious term, but it's just for ease of conversation, right? So at this point in time, you have too many methyl groups built up that are potentially not being distributed in the right place. So you can also think about it as there is a lot of methyl groups on the transport truck, but no driver. And you can also think about it that your body's producing too many or they're not being distributed correctly. But If you are overmethylating, taking methylfolate is going to make you feel terrible. So if you're concerned about that, I highly recommend doing the Mood Sense methylation test. It's available on my website or via my website. And I've got a 10% discount for listeners. The discount code is Histamine Well 10. And you can get 10% off. This test, you just do it from home and it will tell you if you are undermethylating or overmethylating. And you can start there. Now, just because you've got an MTHFR gene mutation does not mean that you are undermethylating. I've seen this a lot recently since I've been doing this test. It's particularly important for menstruating women to understand this because estrogen can often push you into overmethylation, even with an MTHFR gene mutation. There are many genes and enzymes and nutrients required to make SAMe. So many, like 12 or 13. And then we have lots of enzymes and genes that can be impacted by methylation. So it's really complex, and we can now test in real time to see what's actually happening with your methylation. So I urge you to take this test. It will give you a really good baseline of where to start. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found this episode beneficial. Be sure to subscribe to the Histamine Well so you don't miss an episode. Leave a review, and you can also share this episode with someone who could benefit. If you have any questions you'd like answered or have a topic you'd like me to discuss, please go to my website, joannekennedynaturopathy.com, where you can provide us with that information. Until next time, take care and be well.